I was stirring honey into my tea when the phone rang. Private number, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up Miss Hartley. A man's voice. "This is Kyle from Everest Mortgage, just following up on the missed payment for the 16th Avenue property." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what property?" The silence on his end stretched the house. "You're co-listed on with a Marissa Hartley." My heart dropped. "Marissa, my sister." I pulled the phone from my ear and checked the call log. The number. The timestamp. Everything. This wasn't a scam. I whispered, "There must be a mistake. I don't own a house." He read off the address. The street name sounded vaguely familiar. Then it hit me. It was the townhouse Marissa had shown off at Thanksgiving last year, the one she said her boyfriend's uncle helped her finance. The guy on the phone kept talking, something about late fees and credit risk. But I wasn't listening anymore. My hands had gone cold. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even been there when the call ended. I sat in my living room staring at nothing, replaying every family dinner, every casual comment. Had I ever agreed to anything? No, never. But I remembered something now, back in March when I'd gone home for Dad's birthday. I'd left my tote bag in the kitchen while setting the table inside it. My tax folder, my signature sheet, they couldn't. But I already knew they had. The next morning, I walked into Everest Mortgage wearing my work heels and my calmest face behind the glass partition. A cheerful woman named Lacey pulled up the file. "Yep, you're listed as co-borrower, signed and dated March 18th. That's your signature, right?" She turned the monitor toward me. My name was there, slanted, precise, almost perfect, but not perfect enough. The Y was curled too high, and they'd forgotten. I don't abbreviate my middle name on legal documents. It was a forgery, a good one, probably scanned from something I'd signed in another life. I asked her, "And can I see the full file?" She hesitated. "You're on the loan, so yes." It took 20 minutes, and a legal pad to piece together the chain of events. The house was purchased under Marissa's name, but the mortgage included a co-signer. Me added retroactively via supplemental paperwork. A notary had signed off on it, a name I didn't recognize. Reginald Sharp. I took a photo of the document, the notary stamp, the date. Then I asked the question that finally cracked me: how much is left on the loan? Lacey glanced at the screen. $462.21. My throat tightened. I walked out of that office in a daze. My name wasn't just on paper, it was on the hook. And suddenly all those sweet family dinners. The birthdays I'd funded, the guilt trips about not visiting enough. They weren't memories, they were a setup. I drove straight to my parents' house. Mum was pruning roses in the front yard. Her gloved hands, careful, theatrical. "Evelyn," she said, surprised, "you should have called." I didn't smile. "Can we talk?" She led me to the kitchen, poured sweet tea, like we were catching up. "I didn't sit. I know about the mortgage." I said flatly, "I didn't sign anything, but my name is on a loan." She blinked, then laughed. "Oh, honey, it's just paperwork. You're so good with finances. You'd have done it anyway." My heart pounded. "You forged my name." She didn't deny it. She tilted her head. "You left your papers out that day." I figured, what's the difference? You always help the family. That was when Dad shuffled in, rubbing his neck. "Your sister needed a boost. That's all you make more than she does." I turned to him. "It's illegal." He looked away. And that's when Marissa came downstairs in yoga pants and full makeup. She didn't flinch, just sipped her oat milk latte. "I thought you said it was fine," she said with a practiced shrug. "Don't tell me you're going back on your word." I stared at her. "I never gave you my word." Marissa smiled like she was watching a sitcom. "Then why are you so easy to use?" His office was tucked between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. No fancy sign, just a small brass plaque. Henry Callaway Property Law. He looked like someone's retired uncle. Cuffed sleeves. Thick glasses, a tie that hadn't been trendy since Clinton. "Miss Hartley," he said, motioning me in. "You said your name was placed on a mortgage without your consent." I nodded. Sliding over the documents, Henry read them. slowly humming under his breath like he was solving a crossword. After a long pause, he said, "You're not the first, but you might be the smartest one to walk in before the house goes under." I didn't speak. He leaned back. "Tell me what you want. Miss Hartley, do you want them arrested or do you want control?" I looked at the ceiling, thinking of Marissa's smug smile. My mother's shrug, my father's silence. "Control," I said. He smiled, not warmly, knowingly. "Then you'll need patience and documentation. We don't scream. We position you're not here for revenge. You're here to reclaim the ground they built on your back." That was the first time someone said what I hadn't been able to. They didn't mistakenly drag me into their mess. They counted on me being too loyal to fight back. Henry slid a legal pad across the desk. "Let's begin. The plan wasn't loud. It didn't involve screaming matches or front porch ultimatums. It started with paperwork, the same weapon they used against me. Henry filed a quit-claim deed withdrawal to sever my liability, but only after we ran a full title trace. That's when we discovered something curious. The loan hadn't been sold off. The bank still held it, and their patience was wearing thin, which made them negotiable with Henry, guiding every step. I opened a private holding trust, Granite Elm LLC, and made an offer to the bank we'd buy out the mortgage at a reduced balance in cash. Quietly, no noise, no headlines, no names, just clean closure. Within 2 weeks, the lender accepted, and just like that, the debt was mine, but the house was not yet on paper. Granite Elm LLC was just another investment firm picking up distressed property to my family. Nothing had changed, but in reality, the trap had already sprung. Marissa had defaulted on 2 payments. She had no idea her loan had been reassigned, and no clue that her new creditor was me. Henry looked over the final document and tapped the signature line. "Want to use a different name?" he asked. I shook my head no. Let them see it when it matters, because this time I wasn't cleaning up the mess. I was preparing the consequences. I didn't call them. I didn't warn them. I simply waited. Marissa missed a 3rd payment. The grace period ended, and then quietly, a notice of default was issued from Granite Elm LLC, with my signature on it. That same week, Mom texted me a photo of a charcuterie board from some wine brunch and added, "Wish you were here." I stared at it for a full minute. The woman who forged my name was now pretending we were best friends, so I replied with a smiley face and archived the thread just in case I needed it. Later, then, it began on a Thursday afternoon. I got a voicemail from Marissa, no greeting, just, "Hey, something's wrong with the loan company. I think it got sold or something. Can you check on your end?" I didn't respond. Next came the email from my father, a clumsy formal thing like he was writing a manager, Evelyn. "If you happen to know anything about the recent changes in the mortgage company, please advise. We're concerned. It may affect our refinancing. I forwarded it to Henry and poured myself tea by the time the notice to cure or vacate arrived on their doorstep. My mother finally called, voice thin, brittle, rehearsed. "We just need some time," she said. I let the silence stretch before I replied. "Did you need time before signing my name, or after she tried to cry?" I didn't flinch. "This isn't personal, Evelyn. You're still family?" "No," I said gently. "I'm a creditor." That weekend, I received a group email from Marissa's real estate agent. She was trying to list the house my collateral without knowing the deed had conditions attached. The sale fell through in 48 hours. Then came the final insult. Lorraine invited me to a family dinner, said it was to clear the air. I replied, "Sure, I'll bring dessert." What I was really bringing ownership and a notary waiting just outside in a parked car, ready for signatures that actually mattered. The dining room smelled like rosemary chicken. In desperation, Lorraine had pulled out the good china. The wine glasses were polished, candles flickered like it was Thanksgiving, but the energy was off. Dad barely looked at me. Marissa's smile was too tight, her eyes bouncing between me and her phone. The only thing louder than the fork scraping porcelain was the silence between sentences. I waited until the plates were cleared. Then I pulled a thin manila envelope from my bag and placed it on the table between the salt and pepper shakers. "What's this?" Lorraine asked too casually. "Updated documents," I said, "for the house." Marissa didn't touch it. her fingers curled around her wine glass, like it was a life raft. Dad opened it, scanned the first page. His lips moved as he read. Lorraine's voice dropped an octave. "What is this, Evelyn?" "Purchase documents," I said. "I own the debt, which means I own the lien, which means you have 30 days to vacate or pay in full." Marissa laughed high brittle. "You can't." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I already did." She stood knocking her chair back. "This is a betrayal." I didn't blink. "No, this is what you signed up for. I just signed it better." They shouted. Dad mumbled something about family. Lorraine whispered that I was cruel. I stood, pushed in my chair, and placed a foil-wrapped box on the counter. "Here's dessert, peach cobbler, the one you used to say I made too sweet." Then I turned to leave outside. The notary sat waiting in a black sedan engine running, and for the first time in months I smiled. I was halfway to the door when Marissa hissed, "You always thought you were better than us." I turned back slowly. "No. I thought I was useful to you, and I was." Lorraine stood, arms crossed, her pearls tight against her neck. "We're your parents. We did what we had to do to me." I said not for me. I walked to the buffet, picked up the folder. They hadn't even touched. Let me simplify it. You have 3 options. 1, pay back the full mortgage to my LLC. 2, vacate within 30 days. 3, contest it in court, which I assure you won't. Go. Well, I have the notary logs, the forged signature overlays and call recordings. Dad tried to speak, but I held up a hand. "This isn't a debate, it's a transaction." Marissa lunged for the folder like she could undo it with her bare hands. "You can't do this to me. I have a career. People follow me, then tell them the truth." I said, "Tell them how you stole your sister's name to fund your curated lifestyle." Silence, the kind that hums. I reached into my purse, pulled out a fresh contract, and placed it flat on the table. Option 4, I said, "Sign this voluntary transfer, and I'll allow you to rent the guest suite at market rate. No credit checks, no co-signers." Marissa stared at it like it might bite her. Lorraine's hands trembled. Dad was the one who finally asked, "Why are you doing this?" I met his eyes. "Because you all thought I wouldn't. You banked on my silence, on my sense of duty, on the fact that I'd rather protect the family name than protect myself." I leaned forward. "You used my name like it was disposable. Now it's the only name on the deed." The notary knocked once on the door. I opened it, nodded, and he stepped inside, briefcase in hand. Lorraine looked ill. Marissa fled to the hallway, muttering curses. Dad just sat down slowly, like gravity had doubled. The notary laid out the documents. "Who signing first?" he asked. I looked around. No one moved. I slid the papers back into the envelope and handed them to him. "They'll call you when they're ready," I said, "but they won't, not yet." And then I walked out, heels tapping across the hardwood like a garvel. The next morning, I sent a single email subject line, "Final filing." Granite Elm LLC attachments, digital copies of the foreclosure, filing proof of ownership, transfer audio clips, and notarized statements within 24 hours. Henry forwarded me a message from the county office confirming the property lien had been transferred in full. Under my name, no loopholes, no appeals, no more pretending. Later that week, I got a call from a local journalist, Miss Hartley. "We're doing a piece on fraudulent real estate filings. Your case is being cited in a training seminar." I declined the interview. This wasn't a public battle, it was a surgical strike. The kind of justice you don't need applause for Marissa. Meanwhile, posted a vague Instagram story about being betrayed by someone who never understood legacy. She tagged no one. But the message was clear and irrelevant. I didn't argue, I didn't explain, I just kept everything, PDFs, voice memos, screen recordings, in a folder on a password-protected drive titled Insurance. When Lorraine tried to guilt me over email, I sent her a single sentence. "You taught me how to be quiet. I just learned how to make it permanent." The truth is, I didn't ruin them. I let them self-destruct with the help of a paper trail they signed themselves into. 3 weeks later, the house sat empty. They didn't fight the eviction, they didn't respond to the final notice. They just vanished. Marissa moved into a rental 2 towns over. Lorraine went silent. Dad never called, and I didn't chase any of them. Instead, I called Henry and gave him new instructions. We were renaming the Trust Granite. Elm LLC would now operate under a new legal name, Lena Hartley Foundation, after my grandmother, the one my mother erased from family photos, the one who taught me how to balance a checkbook and hide emergency cash in her bra, the one they never spoke of because she refused to be obedient. Now every dollar of rental income from that house would go into a scholarship fund for first-generation women in finance. Evelyn Hartley, the dependable one. The boring sister, the woman they thought would never fight back, had just turned their betrayal into a tax-deductible legacy. That was fair value to me, not revenge, not spite. Reallocation, they took my signature and used it like it was nothing. I turned that nothing into equity in both property and principal. And as I locked the front door of the house, one last time I didn't feel victorious. I felt balanced, like a ledger closed without debt. I didn't host a celebration. There was no champagne, no post on social media, no big reveal. Instead, I moved into a smaller home, in a quiet neighborhood, a fixer-upper-nothing fancy just mine. I planted basil on the windowsill and started taking long walks before dinner. I read contracts for fun. I slept through the night one day while cleaning out old boxes. I found a birthday card from 5 years ago, unsigned. No message, no handwriting, just a generic hallmark phrase about being proud of who you've become. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was fitting. That's how they'd always operated. Surface love, silent sabotage, but I wasn't angry anymore. I'd outgrown the version of myself that needed their approval. The strong one wasn't the loudest. She didn't shout or cry or beg to be believed. She read the fine print, she knew the terms, and when the time came, she signed her own name and walked away. I hadn't become cruel. I'd become precise, and with every quiet step forward, I left behind the old roles, the beautiful daughter, the financial fixer, the emotional shock absorber. They used to say I was too quiet, too serious. Turns out silence was my sharpest weapon, because when I finally spoke, it was with action, and there was no apology in it. The grass was overgrown. I stood at the edge of the yard, the one they once called Marissa's place. Now the deed said otherwise. I held a small measuring wheel in my hand, slowly walking the perimeter, watching the counter tick. Each click marked distance, but to me it marked something else. Boundaries the kind they never gave me, the kind I had to draw myself at the back fence. I stopped and looked out at the field behind the house, quiet, open, untouched. A symbol of everything I'd reclaimed. No, I didn't set fire to the house. I didn't throw anyone out in the street. I gave options, terms. I followed the rules. Even when they didn't, because power isn't in chaos. It's in control. They had put my name on something without asking. So I asked for nothing and took back everything. In the end, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the house. It was about finally choosing myself without apology, without noise, without needing them to understand. I turned back toward the street keys in hand, sunlight cutting low across the lawn, and in that stillness I heard it. Not forgiveness, not regret, just the sound of peace. They built that house with stolen signatures. I reclaimed it with silence and drew the property line with my own name.